Hey everybody. We've already learnt how important fossils are in our understanding of evolution. Now we need to know the basic steps in how fossils are made and how we can find them, since they are made deep underground in rocks. So the story of fossils starts when an organism dies and it sinks to the bottom of a body of water, like an ocean, but also lakes and rivers too can make fossils. So the reason fossils are made in water so often is because there's not much oxygen in water, particularly at the bottom of a lake or the bottom of the ocean. And that means decomposers aren't as active and they don't break down the organism quickly. Most species, when they die, particularly on land, obviously they'll be decomposed and their body will basically be returned to the soil and the air. But some species, fossilization will actually happen. So it's sunk to the bottom. Over time, depending if it's the right environment, then layers of sediment, which is clay and dirt and silt, starts to pile on top of that dead organism. So eventually it gets covered in layers of sediment. And over time, when there's enough sediment on top of that dead organism, then it starts to compress it, and that causes the organism to actually turn to stone, so its body gets replaced by minerals. So essentially it gets turned to stone. So body parts turn to stone. The scientific name for that is mineralization. The chemicals that used to make up the body are turned into minerals. Usually it's the hard body parts that are preserved as fossils, so shells in this case, and often it's the bones of other species that get preserved, because soft parts like flesh, they still tend to decay even if we're in a low oxygen environment. Okay, so once the body parts have turned to stone and they're covered in lots of rock layers of sediment, well, by now that sediment has turned to rock, and we've made our fossil. But the final part of the story is, how do we actually find the fossil? Because at the moment it's buried deep underground. So the only way to find fossils for most people, unless we have really expensive drilling equipment, is for that fossil to be exposed up at the ground level again, and then we can come along and find it. So the way that happens is that over millions of years, geological processes like mountains building can actually lift up layers of rock, and they can bend them and fold them, and that can mean our fossil that used to be deep underground can be raised closer to the ground level. So geological processes can uplift the fossil. So at the moment our fossil's buried in a mountain, but at least it's above ground level, and the most likely way we'll be able to find it is over millions of years, as the air and water, maybe from glaciers, maybe from rivers and rain, it's going to erode that mountain. So bit by bit, all those layers of rock above our fossil will start to erode. Eventually, our fossil will be exposed and someone has a chance of coming along and finding it. So erosion removes the layers above and it exposes our fossil. So that's the main process of how we can find fossils.